Hey folks, so today I want to speak all about pyramid training. So hopefully by the end of this video, you will have an idea about how to implement pyramid training in your routine and in your week and what it's going to do for you. So I think pyramid training is something which has fallen out of favor in recent years, more for straight sets or intensity techniques. It's something which is not really talked about as much because I think there are some criticisms which have been unfairly placed against it. So I want to present you with some potential benefits and implementations into your routine. Okay, I don't think this is the answer for everything, but I think it has some sensible implementation for the right person. But before we go on, I'm Faz. This is my channel, Fazlifts. I provide educational content on the topic of getting jacked and strong once a week on YouTube. If that sounds like something you're interested in, do go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, because quite a lot of you, about 53% of you, are subscribed, which also means 47% of you aren't. So that would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button now. Also, I do offer coaching. That's what I do full time. There are links in the description. Get in touch and let me see what I can do to help you. Right, so I want to start off with just framing the discussion. I think pyramid training in recent years has been fairly dismissed as being kind of outdated. My experience, however, has taught me that it still has a lot of value. And historically, this is generally how most bodybuilders did train and how most bodybuilders outside of the YouTube evidence-based space do still train. And I think it's wise to touch base on what actual bodybuilders are doing and have been doing for decades. What has the mass population decided is a good way forward? Because I think that's always important to know. I like the reality of what people are doing outside of our little bubble of evidence-based training. So critics will misjudge this because they're evaluating it through the lens of strength performance rather than growth efficiency. Now, what I mean by that is basically people just freak out when they have to lift a lighter weight. That's it. They freak out when they get to the top set and maybe it's 10 kilos lighter than what they normally do. Like a guy who's benching 100 kilos for a 6, God forbid he has to pull back to 90, even though it might feel better on his joints and he might get a better mind muscle connection, but it's in the ego. Also, I think people misjudge the value of work capacity because I think it's important. It's something we used to talk about all the time, but it's something which has fallen out of favor with the modern landscape of evidence-based training and more low volume-based protocols. So I'll end this first section by saying it's not a gimmick, it's not outdated, it's a historically proven loading scheme, which the majority of actual real bodybuilders outside of the evidence-based circle do still do. And there's probably a good reason why the majority of them still train this way and have done so historically. And I'm going to explore some of those reasons over the course of this video. I wanted to start off with addressing the criticisms around pyramid training, of which I think there are two main ones. The first one is that you are not going to be as fresh for your top sets. And this idea that it matters if your performance tanks. What I mean by that is if you have to use less weight on the bar for your top set, people get very emotionally upset at that. Now, my opinion is, and this is coming from an ex-powerlifter, why do you care for hypertrophy? For hypertrophy, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all about the top weight, whether it's your maximum weight you can lift as you're fresh or whether it's 10, 15 kilos down. As long as you are able to go into that set with full focus, good form, and exert an all-out effort close to or at failure, it doesn't matter. In fact, I would argue the fact that you are getting more tired and more fatigued as you go through the workout is actually a sign that what you're doing is working. Okay, because you are exacting an inroad into your muscles, to use the old HIIT term. So for powerlifters who are looking to peak their strength in the last few weeks before a competition, yes, being fresh absolutely matters. For the rest of us looking to build strength and mass across the course of the year, it doesn't. You do not need to be fresh for hypertrophy to deliver a good stimulus. And I would argue for the amount of work that you need to do with the proximity of failure that you have, I would argue you don't want to be fresh over the course of the workout either, because that would mean you're training well away from failure. You don't have to be fresh for all your sets. So let's let that criticism go. And on that note, what I would say is if you are fatiguing way too early, if your reps are just tanking, it's not proof that the method doesn't work. It's proof that your work capacity sucks, and it's an avenue that you can exploit to get better and bigger and stronger and train harder. So just to summarize this criticism and rebuttal, in my view, the obsession with freshness really stems from powerlifters and powerlifter-centric thinking, which usually comes from the evidence-based guys in our space. I mean, if you look at all the evidence-based guys who really put out a lot of information online, they're all ex-powerlifters. And as a result, they will all have their biases and view training through that lens. So I'm trying to just change that. I'm trying to change people's perspective on that. This idea that pyramids are not effective because they fatigue you for your top sets, it's irrelevant for hypertrophy. So next criticism is related, but it's a little bit different. And that is that pyramid training is not specific to the goal of building strength for hypertrophy. People are saying it's not that good for building strength for mass. Now for that, I would disagree. I think for building strength over the course of the year, this type of work is actually superb. And I want to just point you to the anecdote of my own training when I was a powerlifter. Most of the year was spent training on fatigue. You only allow for freshness in the last few weeks before a competition so that you can express your strength. And once again, you do not need to be at your freshest for your top set of bench presses on a Monday afternoon. Okay, you don't. You just need to ensure that you are seeing progressive overload over time. Now, to do that, you have to be training with a sufficient proximity to failure and a sufficient volume. So you're not going to be fresh. It's this mad idea that you have to be fresh for every set. You don't. To do enough work, to train hard enough, you're not going to be fresh. If you're fresh for every set, I'd say you're doing it wrong. You want to be training with some fatigue because that means you're actually working in the gym. Do you get what I'm saying? So this idea that it's not specific to building a 1 rep max or strength for hypertrophy is absolute nonsense. You can still progressively overload just within the confines of your existing set and rep scheme, whatever that is. So those are really the two major criticisms when it comes to pyramid training. So let's talk about what pyramid training is. I'm going to shoot you with some examples. I'm going to give you some examples of what common pyramids are. The first one is your standard pyramid. That is, you add weight every set and you drop the reps. So something like 20, 15, 12, 10, 8. That's something which I've been using personally over the course of last year, which has been working very, very well for me for upper body exercises. You also have the reverse pyramid, which is where you start heavy with lower reps and then you progressively drop the load and add reps. Now, I will say for the record, I know a lot of people really like this approach because it means they can get a heavy weight in and lots of challenging sets. Like, I get that, but I would argue that really takes away one of the main benefits of pyramid training, which is excellent warming up and lubricating your joints ready for those heavy weights. Now, I know a lot of people are really into reverse pyramid training. So with that point, see how you feel. Personally, I think it's more of a strength focused type of pyramid, but it can work. You just need to make sure your warm-ups leading into it are very good. It's usually an approach which works very well for people who are younger or more robust or who favor low volume approaches. Now, next up, you have the full pyramid that is going up in weight and then back down in weight as the reps go higher again. That is valid, but for my money, it's just a lot of time spent on one exercise. You know, if you take 5 sets up and then 3 sets down, it's quite a lot of work on that one exercise where they may all be challenging sets. I would argue just pick one. Just a standard pyramid wins, in my opinion. The next one is step pyramid, which is a little bit like step loading. You kind of go forward, back a bit, forward again. It's not that commonly done, but it is possible. And the final one, which I'm just going to mention briefly because I do have a video coming out on it, is ramping sets. Ramping is where you progressively add load towards a single top set. The idea is, let's say as an example, you're sticking in the range of 8 to 12. You do a set, you add weight, you add weight, you add weight. In the end, you're left with your heaviest weight for that range of 8 to 12. It's a little bit more involved than people think initially, because people think it's just one top heavy set. But as I will explain in the video coming out soon, it's maybe a little bit different to that. In my opinion, with regards to pyramid training, all pyramid training, except for ramping, should hit multiple rep ranges, multiple weights. It's a little bit like daily undulating periodization, a bit like my wizard, but it's all within a single workout. So it's self-contained microcycle within the same workout, within the same exercise. So you get a variety of reps for one exercise, which can be quite useful because, quite frankly, a lot of people will stick to the same rep range and they won't allow themselves to get better at different rep ranges in an exercise, which can lead to some benefits. So I want to just talk now about why pyramid training works, why it's effective. So for the first one, I think is the main benefit that I've personally experienced, and that is warm-up quality and joint health. This has been awesome for my own personal training. Generally speaking, the first exercise of the day of that body part, I will use a pyramid. So that means I can start light, I can get the reps in, I can get nice and warmed up, nice and lubricated, get my muscle connection right as well. It's perfect for older lifters or guys with more sensitive joints. So if you're warm, you're loose, and you're moving better, you're going to have better, heavier sets as well. It's easier on the joints. It feels smoother than those minimalistic top set methods. Like, yeah, okay, maybe you're not going to lift as heavy as your gym rival across the gym floor for that particular day. But really, beyond that little rivalry, who actually cares if you're going home with a sore shoulder and strained tendons in your elbow? You may as well just do the pyramid and warm up properly. And then once that first exercise is in and you're feeling good about yourself, you can go to more traditional methods. So the first big benefit is in warming up and really getting in and getting your joints nice and lubricated and making sure you're grooving yourself with a great mind muscle connection for your later sets. Something that a lot of people will say to me fairly consistently is their second set feels better than their first. I mean, that's a prime example of what I'm talking about here. That means they're going into their first set not really ready. If you do a pyramid, you're more likely to be ready. Now, the next benefit is work capacity and adaptations. I think a lot of people have really just forgotten about the benefits of building work capacity. This was huge back in the day. I mean, my entire approach to the Wizard, that was built on this idea of building work capacity. I just knew it back then. I took what Dr. Casey Butt had taught me about full body, heavy light, medium, and I combined it with my own ideas about work capacity and just supercharged that workout to the point where I was training with a lot of volume, with very short rest periods. My work capacity was amazing and it did great things for hypertrophy. And you never know, you might just be one of those guys who responds to it really well like I did. So work capacity improvements is generally something which is very important and towards your hypertrophy goals. For a couple of reasons. I think if you can do and recover from more work, you're going to be in a better position to grow. Secondly, there are some advantages to conditioning yourself for higher rep sets. Like, for example, if you can condition yourself to higher rep squat patterns, leg press patterns, you will be that much better off in holding your position correctly for the course of the set and getting the most out of those sets. I mean, it's very, very common for people to lose their position on squats, but if you start to condition yourself with higher rep squats with great form, all of a sudden that will transfer over really well when you're doing those challenging sets. It's a really good way to do things. And the other thing I'll say is with the higher repetitions, the lift can sometimes feel very, very different. For example, I saw a study a while back, which I have quoted before on this channel, and that was testing the bench press and different percentages. As the percentage of the 1 rep max got higher on the bench press, you actually got more tricep involvement and less chest involvement, proportionally speaking. Now, the net effect of that is, if you're not very good at doing high reps, you may never get that much chest growth from your pressing. Proportionally, you may always get more tricep growth. Maybe the solution for you is to actually get better at doing high reps. Maybe you always avoid high reps because it's just not something that you're interested in doing. But if you condition yourself via a pyramid, you improve your work capacity, maybe you can actually unlock a rep range where you get great gains. You never know. So I think that specific work, the specific improvements in that exercise is going to actually help your conditioning a lot better than doing, say, cardio. Cardio helps, of course, it's good to be conditioned, but if you're specifically conditioning yourself for high rep sets on that exercise, odds are you're going to have better conditioning on that specific exercise. Remember, the body is very specific in how it responds to things. And finally, I want to say another benefit is efficiency. Okay, with pyramid training, pretty much all your sets are productive and challenging. You can jump in, depending on how strong you are, depending on how injury prone you are, you can jump in with what is pretty close to being a 20 rep max on an exercise and be perfectly safe. You know, for some people, I mean, if you're very, very strong, if you're doing things like squats and deadlifts, maybe not. But for smaller exercises, yeah, absolutely. So that saves you a lot of time. You can just go straight in with it. You're using a weight which is maybe half what you normally would use, but you're making it into a productive set. And with that weight, my God, your form can be amazing. Your mind muscle connection can be superb. You can really target the muscle you're trying to bias. There's so many benefits to starting off grooving the lift with lighter weights and challenging sets. And finally, one more benefit I'll say is psychological. Personally, for me, it keeps it interesting. I like the fact that I can do a set, I can stand up, change the plates, sit down again. It gives me something to do. You know, it's nice to stay active because I like to work fast between sets and it keeps me active. If I'm just sat there twiddling my thumbs, I don't really enjoy that side of lifting. I prefer just to lift and or do something. So my opinion, it's stimulating, and it also means you can kind of like win at different rep ranges. You've got a target for your 15s, you've got a target for your 12s, you've got a target for your 8s. It's nice to have the variety built into the program. You can get better on different things. You never know. You might be a high rep wizard. You might be really well suited to low reps. With this, you at least expose yourself to a wider range of reps, which you might not normally do. Right, guys, to summarize the main points and why I will use pyramid sets for usually the first exercise of the day and no more, is that you get a full warm-up and joint injury prevention. Second thing is it drastically improves my work capacity, not only overall, but on that specific exercise too. And for that specific body part, you get a full range of hypertrophy stimulus and repetitions across that exercise and that body part, which is great. If you don't normally do sets of 15 or 20 for your chest, for example, at least you get that exposure in, and it probably is going to do something good because it's something you've avoided before. I think in the long term, it is better for your joint health and it gives you a lower injury risk. I feel wonderful with this style of training. It feels great. And also it gives you more variety and more motivation than minimalistic loading volumes, which I think can get a little bit stale. And finally, I want to just end by saying fatigue is something that you shouldn't fear. It's normal. I would say it's even necessary because we are trying to lift with sufficient volume and also sufficiently hard. We are going to be fatigued. It's not something you can avoid. So my final stance is that pyramid training is not outdated. I think it's just something which is slept on. It's underrated. Right, guys, so I'm going to call it there. But if you would like all of this programmed for you, you can actually program this in my Fazlifts RX app, which is brilliant. I mean, the app I've mentioned before is so powerful. But yeah, you can actually program in pyramid sets into that app. Just speak to it, say, hey, I want the first exercise for each day, for each body part as a pyramid set. It will lay it out for you, and it's wonderful. The technology is superb. So check out the app. If you want low-cost coaching done for you and adapted for you week by week, check out the app. It's absolutely wonderful. It's such powerful tech. Right, guys, I'm going to call it there. What I'd like you to watch next is a video on monthly progression. Go ahead and click on that now, and I'll see you over there.